Hey, it's Antrice, and welcome to another episode of the Savvy Painter podcast. If you are a longtime listener of the podcast, thank you and welcome back. And if you're new to this podcast, welcome. Savvy Painter is the podcast for artists who want practical, tactical tips to create a meaningful art practice that is both fulfilling and supports you. This episode is part of a series of podcasts where I brought together a round table of artists from Growth Studio. What I did was I picked several topics I thought you might be interested in hearing about, and I asked Growth Studio members to come on the podcast for a deep dive discussion. Today we have Sabrina Setaro, Elisabeth Svendby, and Beverly Woodhall, and we're going to talk about getting your work critiqued. Fun, right? Okay. So some of the things that we talk about is what's the purpose of a critique? How do we deal with advice that we're not really sure if we agree with it or not? How to get past the nerves of having your work critique? And most importantly, what these artists have learned about their own work from consistently seeking out constructive feedback. So let's start with a quick round of introductions, and we can just start with Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina Setaro. I live in South Carolina, in a small town called York, and I do mainly watercolor and gouache work. And it's mainly abstract and very intuitive, even though I see worlds in there and little things. But yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Elisabeth, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Elisabeth Svendby. I live in Oslo, Norway. Right now I'm painting and drawing mostly figures using oils or wax pastels.
How about you, Beverly?
Hi, Antrice. I've been a longtime listener of your podcast, so kind of excited to be here. My name, Beverly Woodhall, and I am mainly an abstract painter currently. I use a lot of mixed media, but I have recently fallen in love with oil paint. And so the painting usually ends up with a lot of oil painting and oil sticks on top of layers of other things. Yeah.
Nice.
I live in North Carolina on the Outer Banks.
Perfect. I love it. And I love like we're from all over the place. It makes it so much fun. Okay, so let's dive in. I think a lot of artists crave feedback on the work, but I know it can also be kind of scary and vulnerable to put yourself out there in that regard, to be showing your work to people. And I think also that a lot of artists have had critiques that maybe weren't so helpful. So I know that sometimes it can make artists nervous about asking for feedback. So let's just start off with this question. What do you think are the benefits of getting a critique? I mean, why do that? Why put yourself through that? And yeah, let's start with Beverly.
Oh gosh, I love critiques. I love when I get critiqued on my artwork and the other people, because I always get something out of it. I've been with Growth Studio for a good while now, so I do hear a lot of critiques, and there's things that pop up over and over again that they're really ingrained in me now. And so I have super learned how to look at artwork from a different perspective than when I first started. And I've always benefited. When you talk about my work, it's like you just turn the lights on and I'm like, oh, yes.
I love the little hand gesture that gets little sparkles.
I could talk forever on it, but that's probably enough for the first question, right?
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, like when you first started, were you nervous about getting your work critiqued?
Yes, I go through phases with anxiety just in my life. So sometimes I'm literally terrified. And then other times I'm so super comfortable, that I like to join in and talk a lot. So for me, it's an up and down thing, but it can make you really nervous. But even if you're nervous, it's super important to put your art out there and let people talk about it so you can improve and not come at it as anyone's like attacking you or anything. And you can always take or leave the advice.
Sabrina, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, Oh, Beverly, what you said, I mean, I underline everything. I'm newer to Growth Studio. I've been coming since 6 months, I would say, and the advice I got when I joined has become so true, and the advice from the others were participate, do get yourself out there as soon as you can, and I did, and it was really good advice because it also not just do I get hints on what actually is coming out of me on the painting. Sometimes it's hard to see that, but seeing that others see that too and can say, oh yeah, I see that, then it is like a thread that is easier to find to get to the next one. So that is very helpful, but also being able to articulate what I like about my work, we always start with, what do you love about your work, and what do you want help with? And I think that sets the tone and the mindset really well right at the beginning to think about this. Critique is not so much about this particular painting, but it's basically about finding out what you want and how you and Growth Studio can help. And that is very helpful, and that also helps me not to be so nervous about it. So I'm not really nervous about when I send something in, because I know I will get the help, and sending in a critique is always a celebration to me too, because we created work no matter what, and we bring it and we share it, and there's so many good things coming out of it, no matter if it's a successful painting or not.
Yeah, I agree.
Elisabeth, how about you?
I don't know if there's so much to add to that. I think most of the things have been said now, but I think also it was scary in the beginning, but that was more like all eyes were on me and my work. So it was quite a vulnerable situation. And but now I don't really have that problem anymore, because it's never been a bad experience. It's always good stuff that comes out of that. Like Sabrina said, I get practice in talking about my work, because I work alone all the time, and I don't really have that many arty friends, or if I do, we don't really talk about our work as much. So to actually articulate what I feel and what I like about my own work has been really, really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Elisabeth, what's one or two things that you've learned about yourself as an artist or a painter from getting your work critiqued, whether it's through Growth Studio or anywhere else?
So I think the most important thing that I've learned is that everything is up to me. So through the critiques, I've actually learned that my paintings are pretty good. Actually, the most paintings I bring in, no matter how insecure I am and how critical I get, while I work, and you can get into these negative cycles when you're all by yourself. So that I guess that trusting that my taste is fine and that I make good work, and I just keep doing what I'm doing and bring them in and get good advice whenever I need it, and everything can be solved, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and just to believe in what I'm doing. Yeah.
So one of the things, like Sabrina mentioned, is that we start off the critiques with, what do you love about your work? And for me, as a person in this situation who's giving the critiques, one of the things that, and I know it's mean and cruel to ask you guys that question, it's like, what do you love about your work? but for me, one of the most, I think, beautiful things is watching this evolution of you at first being like, well, nothing, or, like, I can't, I don't know what to say to that, to then describing in detail what is working well in the painting, what you're loving about it, and having this connection to your work that I think is essential for you as painters to have that embedded in you when you go back to your studio. It's just something I'm very, passionate about. And it can be hard, honestly, sometimes, because I can see you squirming, like not you, but I've seen all of you squirm a little bit with that question. But I know that if I keep like nudging you and nudging you and nudging you over time, that you'll start to see what everybody else on the call sees, which is this is like a gorgeous, there's so many gorgeous moments in it. And the only question is, how do we close the gap between what you see and what you want to create? Do you have something, Elisabeth?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's so nice to see how this feedback up in the chat from the others also. It's a really confidence boost to see all the nice things they're saying. And yeah.
Sabrina.
I think besides the beauty of it, right, that you start with a good thing, that what you love about it, and to set the tone right, for me, it is a fast track really to focus on what is essential with this piece, because I'm easily distracted by other things, and it is hard when I paint for myself to look at it and know, oh yeah, this is what I was maybe trying to do, or this is why is this not working, why is that? And by you asking this question, it's really like fast tracking, putting complete focus on immediately. Yeah, if you look at what do you like about it, what is it, what was your intention, what works, and then also how can you make more of and not. So I think it is a way to really bring intense focus to the critique itself and take out all the things that don't matter so much, and we get really quick. It's amazing too that we have an hour and we go through several works, and each one is really meaningful because we don't waste time on the surface on things that don't matter, but treat it exactly for the most essential part. And I think that speeds up. It has sped up my learning a lot, and to really get quickly to also learn about what the other artists are about. And I think that's amazing. And it feels good too, even though it is not about getting away with, this is this great piece of work that I did. It is way more deeper and meaningful.
Beverly, was there anything you wanted to add or say?
Well, I'm thinking about, sitting here and thinking about our critiques. And at first, a lot of the things went over my head when you were talking about other people's art, but I've obviously learned so much. But your critiques are really special because you're able to find very important things that will change a painting in a very positive way. And, it's kind of amazing how you just go right to the little areas and you can see it so clearly and share it with us so clearly. And you're very kind. You don't sort of make us feel belittled. It's a very positive experience.
Thank you. What is the most surprising thing you've heard on a critique? You may not have an answer for this, but
yeah, I think it might have to. Brayley's painting comes to my mind for some reason. I think I was surprised when she would bring some of her portraits, and I just thought they were perfect. And you would find things that would dramatically improve it, like on skin tone and things like that. Because I'm not a portrait painter, so I don't understand all that so much. But that sort of comes to mind, that you were able to help us improve on artwork that looks like it might be done. And you've done that with Jack and others, all of us, I think. I tend to bring in artwork that's in progress because I really want help to guide me through to the end. And a lot of people will bring in something that's finished, and you can still find areas they can improve on it. And that, I like that, but that might be a little surprising. Oftentimes where you get to that part where you're sort of stuck you're not quite in that middle stage, but you're sort of working your way through that middle stage. And that's where I like to get thoughts and, critiques, thoughtful advice from you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anybody else too in the group. And that it just helps me sort of reset and find my way.
Yeah. I think it can be really interesting, right? And I'd love to hear from Elisabeth and Sabrina what you think about this, but you're just making me think, Beverly. It's such a good question, an interesting question. And I've never really counted, but I think I would guess like kind of 2/3 of the people bring painting in midway, and then a third, or, I don't think it's quite half and half will bring it in when the painting is finished.
Mm.
And in some ways, I can see benefits in both approaches, right? Because
Sure,
it's kind of like, for some people, when you know that there's all these things that you want to do, it's kind of difficult to bring a painting in knowing that I still have to finish like XYZ. And it's kind of like maybe the thought process of that, right? Of just like, okay, I know all this stuff needs to get done. And then there's the other way of thinking, like you're describing, Beverly, which is, okay, the painting's halfway done. Let's see where it goes. And I think there's benefits to both, right? Because as the person who's doing the critique in the latter, when the painting's done, I can kind of see, and we can talk about what the final execution was and what they had intended and what their gap might be and where they can go in the next
Exactly. Carry it forward. Yeah.
Yeah. What they can carry forward. And in the middle of the painting, I mean, it's just a different conversation, right? It's kind of like, then it's where do we want to go on this one?
It depends, I think, what you need as the artist. Like I often need a little guidance when I'm like 2/3 there to sort of focus and see it from a different point of view. Someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah. But everybody doesn't need that, I suppose, of course. Some people know what they're doing. It's like I came in here
I would argue that none of us.
I came in here completely unprepared, and some people came in very prepared, and we're all different.
Yeah. Elisabeth.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of favoring bringing it to a critique later. I guess there are two reasons for that. One is that I'm very easily influenced. So that I find that I'm continuing on with this painting, if I get feedback too soon, in a different direction than I really wanted to. Mm-hmm. Because I know the other people like this or that. And, so then just giving it a compliment midways will mess with my mind. Especially if they say they love this part and I'm halfway only, then I get one scared of like messing. Yeah, I get just scared of disappointing them sometimes too. Like I'm covering up the part that they loved, So
that is
God,
so
yeah.
So
yeah, it throws me off a bit too. So yeah, I usually come in when I'm like 90%, or that's the best for me. Or maybe even more, because then I'm like, if there's something that I just can't figure out, I know it's not working quite as I want it to in my mind's eye, and then then I can get a second opinion, sort of, and get an expert eye and figure out what I can do. And it's always surprising.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of not that much, which is kind of cool. Yeah, just little tweaks, and you just there it is. Now it's working.
Yeah, that works for your type of artwork too. I'm thinking about the art you make and how that makes total sense.
I'm thinking about, it's one of the things that I really conscious of when I'm talking about your work or about other people's work is understanding what your intention is before I give any thoughts about it. Because as somebody who's giving you the critique, my honest opinion is what I think about your painting is basically irrelevant, right? What's relevant is what do you want from your painting and how can I help you get there, right? It helps that I love your paintings, by the way. So all of you, like it really, I just see so many just like gorgeous, gorgeous moments in all of the work. And also, Elisabeth, to your point, I think part of our evolution as artists is to become more and more just understanding of and having that faith in our own vision, so that when somebody says like, oh, I love this spot. We talk about this, and Sabrina, I would love to, I love your thoughts on this because we've had many conversations about this, but I'm setting you up, Sabrina. But, like when we're working on a painting and like, let's say, for example, somebody says, oh my gosh, Aunt Therese, this part of your painting, I love that so much. And then as I'm, when I go back to it, I might look at that spot and be like, oh my gosh, Elisabeth, like loved that part. And I have to be willing
to cover it up.
I have to be willing to go, like in service of the painting, I have to be willing to, like commit suicide, like to just like take it out, to kill your, like all of those things, to commit suicide in your painting, I hate that term.
It's funny just bringing this up. That's a huge lesson I learned pretty early on. And whenever I have a little part on my painting that I'm in love with, I immediately cover it up. And then I'm free. Because it can dictate what's around, what you're doing, and you'll get trapped by it, and then it's not working. You got to get rid of it and move on. And that was a huge lesson for me, and I have loved that, practice that.
Yeah, and you do that so often now. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard lesson to learn.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
I just almost find it easier to kill my own darlings than the ones that, the expert Aunt Therese pointed out. You know what I mean? Because we respect you so much. So it's not that I had, but it's just got a little bit thing in the back of my head that I know is messing with me a little bit. So, but I'm at the same time, I'm craving your approval, right? Because like we all are a bit insecure. Part of our artists is, craving approval. So. It's
and I have seen places in I'm thinking of like a number of paintings where I said something like, oh my gosh, this part right here, I love it. And then a couple of weeks later, the painting comes back in and that part is gone. But what you've done with it is like 10 times better. I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. Right. So we all just like, we're just responding to what's happening in that moment. Sabrina, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that I would say also that is something that I really learned through the critiques too. I was not aware of how much I was getting precious with the things that were working in my painting and not going the next step to go deeper. And I think it was actually in the first critique, and it already boom hit me. You said to me, it looks like you're holding back. And I was so afraid, maybe because, first of all, I'm more of an emerging artist. The second, because I work in water media, watercolor and gouache, I was so ingrained in my head that don't overwork a painting. You can kill a painting easily. And I was truly holding back. I saw these things and I loved them, and I knew I can make one more brush stroke and the whole thing is ruined, and I will never see this little piece in my life again. It will never be there again. And you saying, I feel like you're holding back, and all of a sudden I saw, yes, it's basically there's so much space still in my painting, and that is not because intention that I wanted to keep it open. It was because I was scared to go further. And the critiques helped me exactly that. When you cited Israel Hirschberg, that you have to be willing to commit suicide in your painting. And I heard that on another, also outside of Grow Studio, you have to go to the abyss. That's so stuck with me. And that is because I brought my paintings to the critique. I mean, sometimes you learn. Yeah, I learn a lot also from listening to other critiques, but that hit me. And then I said, okay, I can. And also getting the encouragement, it's fine. And that's another thing that it's not a problem. Do overwork it, go. If you're afraid, then overwork it. Go even more than you think you do it, so that you don't like your painting again. Oh my gosh. I mean, that was, that is so freeing, because it is so hard. And yeah, I do still constantly too. When I find something that I so much in my painting, and then I feel myself kind of working around and trying to preserve it, and then I know it's time for that big brush. It's time for the abyss. It's just, but it's okay.
You're reminding me of something else, Sabrina. When you think you've done something really special and you don't want to ruin it, but I also learned this, and this is a huge, huge help. You made it once, you can make it again. And the thing is, look at what happened to Taylor Swift, right? They stole all of her music. And she was like, well, it's my music. I can make it again. And she re-recorded all of her music. So she owns it. And it's like, it's just like anything you make, you can always make it again and maybe better. So that kind of goes along with covering up your precious moments, I think. Having trust. Oh, and then it leads into having trusting yourself, which is another huge, huge lesson to learn that Antrice has really gotten me through. Wow, Antrice, dang.
Yeah. Do not make me cry.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, I think that one thing that is important when we're creating our art is to kind of notice that when we are holding ourselves back, that, oftentimes, I hear all of us, and I think this too, I hear us saying this as like, well, I don't want to push it too far. And my question is always, well, how are you going to know if it's too far if you don't push it farther, right? How do you know where the line is if you don't cross the line? You might be miles away from that line, and there's so much you can do between where you are and where that line is. And then you might get to the line and realize like, oh, that's not where I want the line.
I was going to say, though, when you're talking about that, pushing that line, and that was something also that I was trying to do, and I thought I was doing it, but then I remember the time I just said, I want to scribble. I just felt like scribbling, and I literally started painting large pieces with colors that I loved and movements that just letting it all out through my whole body. And that led to this new body of work that I'm now doing. And it's like super cool. So yeah, it's all connected and so many lessons to learn. And, I know there's more coming.
Totally. So here's a question that's kind of similar to what we're talking about, kind of an offshoot. What have you changed your mind about in your paintings as a result of critiques or showing your work to people?
I mean, sometimes I double down if someone says something negative to me, and as you know, and I double down and say, well, you might not like it, but I'm going to take it further. And it's working out for me. And I'm selling the pieces that you just rejected. So you just got to know you can't take everything people say to you to heart, because nobody else is some kind of master over your artwork. It's your artwork, and so no matter who says anything, how qualified they are, it is ultimately yours to make all of the decisions on the piece that you're, working on. That's like you have to do that. You have to be authentic and trust and just be you. And if a lot of people don't like it, it doesn't matter. Just got to get the right people to find it.
Yeah, 100%. Sabrina.
I think about among the many things, I think I learned, or how I look differently at my paintings through the critique, is that I don't see them so much as a product. I see them more as a snapshot of a body of work instead of this product that I have to make perfect so it is presentable. I see it really more of it's almost like when you get an MRI or something, a scan, it's almost like a scan that is just part of something three-dimensional. It's just one at a time. And going to the critiques and how we do the critiques helped me to see it that way and to not fixate or even care too much about that specific piece, because it always, we talk about the piece and talk about all the little things, and it feels so good, and it is a celebration too, as I said earlier. But I moved away from thinking too much of this one piece and go much larger with my thinking.
That's really, I like that, Sabrina. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's that, again, coming back to like not being precious about it. What were you going to say, Elisabeth?
No, I totally agree. And I changed my mind all the time. And on these critiques, I guess that's what it's about. Because mainly the big thing I changed my mind about is usually that it's a pretty good painting, like I said before. And it just needs a few tweaks, right? And those are usually tweaks that you thought were okay, but when you see them, then your mind is sort of blown. How you can take it. You usually take it into Photoshop if you show us things, right? And you put in a little shadow here or a change of temperature, for example, and just to see how things get pushed back or made to come forward. And this just, so then I can change my mind, like you say, in how I think what's done and not, right? Because you see things with new eyes.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on that. It's also really cool to see, what is Andries going to do with my painting instead of that it has to be perfect. It's actually really fun to see what she takes. There's this little kind of dot in that color, change everything. And it becomes fun and lighthearted and easy. And actually, I think it would be so boring if we had these perfect painting and we would just clap hands constantly and say, oh yeah, this is all perfect. It would be boring. So
yeah, it would. And it's also fun when I throw something in there and I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. Don't do that.
Yeah. I just had a memory actually of when I first brought some of my artwork. I was really shy about bringing my abstract paintings because the other people were really bringing much more realistic things and getting these really in-depth, knowledgeable, critiques, because it feels like you just have some sort of file next to you that you can just, in your head, you just know these facts and these elements of artwork and they're right at your fingertips. And I brought my abstract painting in, and just like that, you were able to critique it knowledge and confidence. And I just remember that was like probably a very surprising kind of moment for me. And it was very encouraging, every time I started, because I was a little shy about doing abstract like that. And you were always so encouraging. And yeah.
And now you're doing these giant.
I know. Like I had told you, my dream was since I was in my 20s, was to make large abstract paintings. And I never even tried to do them. And now I'm on my way. It's really crazy. Yeah.
So cool. And I know, okay, so nobody can see this, but we're on a Zoom call and I can see everything. And what I love the most is just the way that Sabrina and Elisabeth are looking at Beverly, like so much love.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh God. Thank you. Y'all are so kind. Thank you.
Sabrina, were you going to say something?
It's also what Beverly describes as it was helpful to her to get the encouragement to just go large and do these. And we're getting to experience and seeing that every week. And I needed the encouragement to go really small and just do these. So again, this speaks to the fact that what we bring to the critique by asking us what we love, what we want, it's not about making large paintings, making small paintings, making abstract, making abstraction or drawing or any of this. It is really about what do you want. And it's interesting that it's not abstract is easier or representation. It's not about any of this or small versus large. And there is a fear associated with it. And the critiques help to get this push to just keep going with it, because it still is going to be scary. It's not that it's, for me at least, I can only speak for me. It's not that I go out with then a painting after critique and think, oh yeah, it's now easy and I'm going to show my work and I'm going to sell my work and all that. There's still fear attached, but it is not overwhelming. I have enough encouragement to take the next step and the next step. And that is, I think, so valuable in these two. And yeah, the encouragement is helpful also sometimes to try things out and on many levels. I think I'm saying more things than I wanted to say to that. I just wanted to say that it's funny that going large takes courage and sometimes needs encouragement, and going small too. And it's all allowed.
Yeah. Well, I think that with both of those, what the encouragement is to go with your instinct and go with the thing. It's your instinct, and it's also follow your curiosity, follow the thing that you think that you shouldn't do. I'm thinking of Elisabeth right now, because Elisabeth was like, at one point was saying like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should do these paintings. I'm like, why wouldn't you do those paintings?
Well, I change my mind so often. I do landscape one moment and then figures the next. And then I go really large. And then I spend 2 months in my sketchbook, and tear those out and frame them, and all kind of mediums too, so and I have this I guess natural urge to like settle down, so let me just figure out who I am, as if who I am is one thing. Like it's oils and it's faces, it never will be. That's something I've learned.
And when you think about that, what that voice is telling you to do is pick one thing, do it, and that's going to be your thing for the rest of your life.
Or it's my death, probably. Right? That feels like it would be the death of me to just do that. So, yeah.
I struggled with that too. Yeah, I struggled with that a lot, Elisabeth. Yeah. A lot. And I think, we just do whatever we want. I kept thinking there were rules, and that you have to do this one thing and make this, show, this imaginary show in a gallery that's all consistent and all the same. And no, erase all of that. It's not anything. That's nothing. That means nothing. You do you.
Yeah. And I think like what to me is most relevant in terms of our growth as artists is allowing ourselves to create the work that we want to create and to be curious about the things that we are curious about. And like that is part of being an artist, is having lots of ideas. And to silence those ideas, to me, I think are long-term, it's detrimental to the artist, because it creates a scenario where you're constantly shutting yourself down and saying, no, I can't do that because I paint landscapes, or no, I can't do that. And so what if you spend 2 months doing on something that at the moment feels like a tangent? I think, as I've seen with every single one of you, there have been moments of, let me go explore this thing. And it feels kind of weird. It feels kind of crazy, but I keep thinking about it. So let's go explore that. And then you go explore that for 2 or 3 months. And then it ends up being the link that you needed to expand the work that you were doing before. And so you can't find the thread before you've done the work.
True.
So I will forever be encouraging you all to paint the painting that you want to paint. Go down that road that you want to go down. Play with that thing that you think is just ridiculous and has nothing to do with what you're working on. Because if it keeps coming up, it's because your subconscious, your mind, it has relevance for you. We don't know what it is yet because we keep shutting it down. So let's not shut it down and find out what it has to say. Sabrina, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I just want to also point out, because it is creating a loving way to talk about art, to be an artist, absolutely 100%. But I think often people might be afraid that this then means we're not taking the art serious, or we're just doing what we want, what feels good, what we're comfortable at, and I think it couldn't be. My experience and critique the way you do them was the exact opposite. Is yes, it's all those things. It is feel good. It is encouraging. It helps me not to beat down on myself, because you don't allow us to do that ever. But it is going so much deeper into the art, into what you can do as an artist, and not just, go explore more, go more detailed on your colors, explore that all more. And that really makes the art better, and it takes it extremely serious. And it is not just a feel good way of talking about our art. I think that if you don't experience it, you could easily maybe think you only learn from brutal critiques or something.
Right. Which, I don't think that brutal critiques are helpful. I think honest critiques are helpful. But I don't think there's ever any reason to be brutal about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's really complex conversations involved in the critiques that really, all these things we've been talking about, it's kind of like the jumping off point, I think, for growth.
Yeah.
Critiques, yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth, what were you going to say?
Yeah, and I think that we haven't really touched on this yet. I guess the fact that you ask us what we're struggling with or what we need help with on the painting, and that can be, at least for me, that can be really important. Sometimes I'm just like, I can just say, just what do you think? Is there anything you see that is obvious to you that I can change? But to be able to just get critiques on what you need, so you don't have to mess with everything you've made, sort of. That's I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So you don't get that famous unsolicited advice. Because if you're happy, you don't need that noise.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else that you are thinking about that you think would be helpful for other artists to hear that I haven't asked you, or you just think would be helpful for other artists who are there in their studios painting away, listening to the podcast, out on a walk in the woods with their dogs?
You have nothing to lose, basically.
Yeah. I think I've said everything. Like, I think they're so important and so well done, and they can just lead you places you didn't imagine you could go.
Sabrina?
Yeah, and I went also a lot of years, and I think that is not uncommon, without having my work shown or critiqued. I would also say, I mean, of course, I agree with everything. And I think listening to this is obvious that we have gained so much from these critiques. But I also want to point out that if you do not want to have your work critiqued, you don't have to. And if you are afraid of showing your work, you don't have to do anything. And there is a lot of good reasons you are afraid, and it tells you a lot of good things about yourself. But if you feel like you're at the point where the fear of not showing is not serving you as much anymore as if it is holding you back in a way, then I would say the only way to get over that fear of showing is just showing. I don't think there is a shortcut to it. It's just showing and practicing and showing your work.
And it's such a safe place to do it. You know, we're also supportive of one another. And I don't think there's ever been an ugly moment in Growth Studio that I've seen.
No.
Maybe some tears, but that's a good thing too.
I can remember, I think I was crying on a critique once, just a year or 18 months ago, when I was painting figures from old family photos, because it felt so vulnerable. Now that's like a distant memory. Really, I feel so much safer, not in being critiqued, but just making those paintings. That's through having critiques and coaching and all of that. Yeah,
which is amazing. So this conversation has sort of naturally gone towards, like, you know, the critiques that we do in Growth Studio, because that's the context that we have for each other. What I'd love to do is let's talk a little bit about advice for people who are not in Growth Studio, what to look for in somebody to critique their work, and or how do you kind of determine, I'm not going to take on that advice, even if it was solicited. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question.
Someone who you respect, you know, you respect their work. If you can find an artist, that's not always easy.
There's usually an art community in the area, right? Everyone has like a little art center, place for the art classes, something like that. And I think that's usually a good place to start.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, right? Because I mean, I'm just thinking where I am, there's not a lot where I am.
Yeah, no, there's not a lot here either. And what's here is kind of, But I don't know. I just think in school classes, take a class in your community college or something like an art class, you know, probably.
And what would you look for? Like, what are the characteristics that you think would be either this is a no-brainer, like, yes, I want to listen to this person, or red. You guys seen the red flag, green flag guy on Instagram? Oh, it's hilarious. He runs around like anyway, not important, but red flags versus green flags for somebody to give you a critique.
Gosh, can't you tell pretty quickly if they know what they're talking about or not? And I think you can tell pretty quickly, but they should at least have their own art knowledge. Even if they aren't making art currently, they know all about art history and elements of art. And, they've seen a lot of art, I suppose that's.
Yeah. Sabrina.
Yeah, I think, and that is how I approached it, and it has been helpful to me. That's all I can say. But I thought long and hard what I want out of a critique first before I looked for a group to show my work, because I know who I am. At this point, I know what really ticks me off and what I don't want. I easily, when I hear the wrong, I know I easily can be put down, and I know I didn't want to have my growth stifled just because of comments on how art should look like. I had that in my past. I knew that I'm not looking for that, but I was looking for growth, and I knew I wasn't looking for approval necessary. Of course. It's so nice. You just want to hear your art is amazing, and just keep doing. Yes, true. And I think that is the icing on the cake when you hear that it is in some way, shape, or form it brings meaning to another person, whether that is great painting or not. But I thought first what I want to get out of the critique, and I really wanted to learn a lot through the critique. So yeah, I do have an arts council in my area, even though it is rural. So I had no idea, and I thought I'll give it a try. But I allowed myself to stop going in case it is not working out, or if it's affecting me negatively. And that doesn't mean that they have to praise my work or like it, but I think sometimes you can sense. So I think thinking first, because I do believe that sometimes getting exposed in the wrong group, getting your art shown in the wrong crowd, can actually have a very detrimental effect then. And it helps when you know what you want, I think, first before getting into a group and finding the people that you feel like, yeah, I can send something. And that might be different for other people. I heard other artists that really like to have people saying, what are you doing is crazy here. And somehow that worked for them, and that's fine. But know what you want first.
I don't know if I would want someone that praises my work per se. You want someone that is educated enough to talk about it elementally, what's going on with it technically. Not so much, oh, it's so pretty, meaningful critique is what I would want.
Elisabeth,
at school, sometimes they can be pretty harsh. I know, I remember in college, but that's not a terrible thing either, depending how it's done. But
yeah,
I don't have any experience with critique other than from you, or from family, which I don't really recommend.
No.
It's just it's like family. I just tell them to just praise it and move on. Basically, don't say anything negative, because I don't know why, it just never works out. And also, I think they don't need that pressure.
True. So funny. Well, thank you all so much for doing this. I love talking to all of you. You're like the highlight of my week.
Thanks, Patrice. It was really nice to have a chat.
Yeah, that was fun.
It's an amazing platform. It's an amazing conversations, and I hope lots of people. It will help a lot of people too, and make them make more art.
Yes, we need more art. Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sabrina, Elisabeth, and Beverly. You can see examples of their work in the show notes of this episode. If you want to learn more about joining us in Growth Studio, or you know that you are ready to accelerate your growth, just go to savvypainter.com/join. We would love to have you. Whatever level you're at, whatever stage you're at with your art, I can help you build your confidence as a painter, find your voice, and create the work that excites and fulfills you. Just pop on over to savvypainter.com/join or find the link in the show notes. Until next time, this is Antrese Wood with the Savvy Painter Podcast. Talk soon. If you want to take what you are learning here on the Savvy Painter Podcast even further, join us in Growth Studio. Growth Studio is a unique community of artists. We meet multiple times a week for live coaching, critiques, and demos. Just go to savvypainter.com/join.